Okay, I wanted to share a little more insight into the current scenario of why the police departments around the United States, and I'm just saying everywhere, are beginning to use excessive and deadly force against people. I know there's an obvious trend towards blacks, but I would have to say that they're just the ones who are being singled out at the present time. It's going to affect everybody, whites, Mexicans, everybody. In a nutshell, here's why they're using deadly force. If you're part of a global government system, you have to be militarized, and that means it has to start with the most basic law enforcement, and that's your local community police officer. And for them to be militarized, they have to train to handle riots, massive outbreaks of everything. During the 60s, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, what happened? The black communities of the entire United States actually looted, pillaged, burned, they did everything and anything you could possibly imagine, and then they justified it on the reality that a black man had been shot down, and in this case he was their messiah during the 60s, was Martin Luther King. And now you have individual people being considered the same thing. It began with Trayvon Martin, and it just escalated into Ferguson, Staten Island, and now every time you hear somebody who's been shot down by a police officer, they become a martyr, just like Trayvon Martin. That even if these people did things that justified the actions of these police officers, it is the intent of the government to incite hatred and violence against not only the police department but against whites and against the rest of society, because this is the fastest and easiest way the government can use an ongoing, escalating increase in violence and hatred in this country to justify martial law. And I know you guys have heard it from me a lot of times, but it's absolutely true. The United States cannot afford to lose a dictator like Obama. They can't afford for him to relinquish his power, and I don't see any reason why in this country right now people think that we can really make change in our policies or the politics, because somebody else higher than Obama is controlling all this, and it is in most likely terms the world banks of the world who are controlling how each and every country's politics are held, how they're run, how they're who is actually chosen. Because in this country there's something called the Foreign Relations Council. It is a group of individual politicians, and we're talking mostly senators, who indirectly are governors in themselves of how the presidential system works and who they will elect next for president, because it's not you or me who votes these people in office. It has to do with those representatives of a global hierarchy who are chosen to hide behind the scenes and make those decisions in place of who it was supposed to be, which is you and me, the average citizen of this country. And it's inevitable, seeing it over and over again on television, that the hate, the violence that the police are consistently encouraging through their actions is to make a blueprint for anybody who is watching to see that we have to learn this stuff, and it means some people are going to die in the process, because we have to know how to handle a whole lot of people more than what we're dealing with right now, which is individual thugs, robbers, drug dealers, burglars, murderers, rapists, all the rest of them. They have to find guinea pigs, okay? Guinea pigs are whoever they find. It can be a black man, it can be a white man, it can be an Indian, it could be a Mexican. Whatever nationality you are, they're not going to single you out and say you're the ones we're going after. It looks that way because the blacks are the main group who are now a majority in the United States. And if you can upset a lot of them and enough of them, you're going to create an entirely new scenario, another civil war. But it's not going to be against two different hemispheres of this country, north, south, east, west. It's going to be against a race. One race making themselves to feel they're better than somebody else. The blacks thinking they are better than whites. And the more that the cops single out blacks to shoot them down for whatever reason, that incites blacks even more to hate not only cops, but also everybody around them, especially whites, because they think the white community is the one who's instigating this. They're saying, well, y'all are the ones that don't want us to have this or to have that, and it has to be initiated because that's the only way that we're going to control what we already have now. And Obama, in the background, is saying that same thing to blacks. You got it, you've got what it takes now, and your government is going to take care of you. He has said that since 2008, and now he's carrying it out through these events where he tells the police departments that you have a badge, and it gives you now just unlimited power under federal guidelines, under the Homeland Security Act that was passed back in 2001. They have that authority because that's what Bush and even Clinton probably initiated back even before 9/11, because they knew one day soon there was going to be a massive just an outcry of hate, not only against the global government because it controls what you have and what you do, but it also controls everything that we do in our lives. And when you look at the police, they don't look like the police anymore. Most of them are in full military garb. They have bulletproof vests, they're wearing fatigues, they're driving around in SUVs that are Humvees and all the rest of this kind of military equipment. And you think, there's no way they can deny that this country is now a police state, because you don't drive around looking like you would be in Mexico. That's all they use in Mexico is military, because it's the only way they can control their masses. When people start throwing pipe bombs and cocktail bombs and all the rest of this stuff, how do you control that? I mean, you can't just shoot them with rubber bullets and think it's going to disband them. They're going to keep coming after you in mass. And that's what the United States is expecting to happen. Any moment now, this whole overflowing kettle of hot oil is going to explode like a volcano. And they have to be able to be ready for the military's presence to be in the streets at any moment's notice. The National Guard already knows all this stuff. They know how to protect your high-ranking political figures. They know how to do riot control because they've been training to do that stuff ever since they entered the National Guard. The only reason the police department are having to do it now is because they know they're going to have to be the only other group who has this knowledge, and they got to be able to do it on whenever scenario they face. I mean, you go and you corner a black man who is armed with a gun, and then you have a mass of other black people who come to their defense and say, we're not going to let you shoot him down, pig, anymore, because that's what they call most cops, is pigs, because they're corrupted. But when they get a mass of black people or white people get together and they're saying, we're not letting you take out your hate on this guy because of whatever reason, you're going to have a scenario of that officer or a group of officers who have the knowledge to start controlling the riots, and vigilante groups are already out there. The police know that. They know that there are groups, and they call them extremists, they call them terrorists or homegrown terrorists. Why? Because When people stand up for their rights and the government says you have no rights, then something has to give somewhere, and it's going to be you. They're not going to stand by and say that your rights matter for anything, because in their minds, they are now your rule, your law, your life. Everything that happens to you is in their hands. They have the ultimate decision to make whether or not you live or not. And the racism issue is really just what the government can use as a tool to get this whole thing started. You know, it's like when you light a fuse, it's going to burn until it gets to the end, and then it's going to explode into the dynamite. Well, the government's already lit the fuse, because every day more and more people are retaliating. More and more people are being singled out by the police. And if you hear the police when they answer the questions, why did you use lethal force against this person? There is a hidden fact in their discussion that says, we have that power because the government gave us that power. So we don't have to answer or justify the reasons for why we did what we did. But all we have to do is try to pacify the public into believing that what we did was justified. In other words, if we can make you believe that what we are doing is right, people in general will believe it, and they'll give up, and they'll say, okay, I believe that, I accept that. But if you're smart, if you're free thinking in your mind of what's going on here, you're going to question every single thing the government does, because they're supposed to be there to protect us. That used to be on every police car in the country, to protect and to serve. Those are two things that in Los Angeles they do not do. They don't do that anywhere in the country anymore. Who do they protect first? Ask yourself, who do the police protect? Themselves. They do not protect the citizen that's out there. Yes, I know they have guns, and I have to say, in those situations when the guy sticks a gun in your face and says, I hate your guts, pig, I'm shooting you, yeah, you're going to have to defend yourself. But if somebody is naked and they're running down the street away from you and you still blow them away from the back, that doesn't make any sense. You know the individual's not armed, but then the cop, he justifies his actions and says, well, I had a suspect running away from me. It's like, how do you know the guy was even armed if he has no clothes on? And they still shot him. This happened in Atlanta about maybe 3 weeks ago. A guy was out in the parking lot of an apartment complex. He was just totally jaybird naked. And the cop comes along and he shoots him, even though he knows he has nothing on him as far as a weapon, and he still shot him. And that is the kind of rationale that the government continually tells people. Well, it's a justified homicide. Is it ever justified to kill somebody? Let me ask a cop this question if you're watching this right now. Didn't you ever think of the idea of shooting a person in order to incapacitate them, like shoot to lame? That means basically you shoot them in the arm, you shoot them in the leg, you shoot them anywhere you have to except in the heart. That way you don't kill them, but then you're still stopping them, you're incapacitating them so that they can't hurt anybody. Cops don't use that rationale anymore. The rationale is, I've got a badge that gives me unlimited power to destroy and kill anybody I have to because the global government gave me that right. And then as a result of that attitude of indifference towards the average citizen, the cop blows away somebody even when it's not justified. And you see that over and over again on television every day. And then they have no guilt complex. Because, you know what? If a police officer has no conscience, and they can shoot people like this and they don't have any concern about it, then that tells you they're at the same level as the same thugs and the same people they're shooting. Because no conscience means no regret, no nothing. And I would say that's probably the part of the brainwashing process that the global government is actually committing against cops and against everybody else. They're being trained and they're being brainwashed to think of a human being as just an obstacle, something that they have to shoot, they have to blow you away in order to justify that it's for the good of a global government system that we do this. And that is why the police state of the United States today is justifying criminal acts, because they say we have to control the masses and we cannot see you anymore as being human. You have to be looked at as the United Nations sees you. You are a complicated animal. You're not a human being. That's how they justify you. That's how they categorize you as an animal. And that's why the police will continue to shoot you. Thank you.